Okay, powering up.
This week on the Aviators, I head back into the airline simulator, but this time with only one engine, and the results aren't so pretty.
And I think I've lost my runway.
We look at Marine Corps aviation in Miramar, California, home of the 3rd Marine Air Wing. And Curtis finds out what it's like to be a Marine FA-18 pilot. The Aviators is made possible by
EAA is a community of aviators sharing the passion, camaraderie, and can-do spirit of aviation. Learn more at eaa.org.
The Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association. America is even more beautiful from the air. Discover it yourself. Information is available at aopa.org.
A good pilot is prepared for the unexpected. The Lifesaver is designed to provide 1 hour of emergency attitude reference for landing in adverse conditions. Mid-Continent Instruments.
and by
Whitman Regional Airport, Mayday Avionics, and Aspen Avionics.
previously on the Aviators.
Well, we have had pilots here as young as 11.
I think the landing part is the easiest part.
Just like that. 200 feet now, and we're gonna touch down here. Almost there. There you go, you're on the ground. You made it on your first try.
Wow.
Okay, powering up.
We've had an engine failure. To try and come back to the airports, but you are a little bit low.
And I think I've lost my runway.
Yes, we're back in the simulator. Last week we saw a kid take to the controls of the Horizon Boeing 737 simulator.
We're almost on the ground.
This week I'm going to try my hand at landing the simulated 737, but things are going to be a little tougher for me.
Shortly after takeoff, we're going to lose an engine. Now, I'm an IFR-rated private pilot, but I am not a multi-engine pilot. I've had absolutely no multi-engine training. I have no idea what to expect. But we have Slavko here from Horizon Aviation that's going to help me through this situation and hopefully bring us down to the ground safely once again.
For this challenge, we're back in the Horizon 737 simulator. I'll be starting with the jet on the runway. Unfortunately for me, I have no idea when I'm going to lose an engine. And having no multi-engine experience, to me, everything is new.
On the ground, ready to go.
Okay, powering up.
Good stuff. And we're gonna keep that one hand there until V1. You're gonna control on the ground with your feet, exactly like you're doing.
Unbeknownst to me, this challenge is starting a lot sooner than expected.
And V1, rotate. So you start pulling back. You've lost your number 2 engine.
Already.
The engine power is coming back. The engine has failed.
Just as we pass through 140 knots, the number 2 or right engine fails. At this speed, we're past the point where I could abort the takeoff, and my only option is to pull up, come around, and land again back at LAX. To compensate for the right engine out, I'm having to apply full left rudder to keep the aircraft moving straight.
Yeah, it does feel kind of lopsided. I'm trying to keep it level, and compensating one way turns me another way. It's hard to explain. It's just, it's not, it's certainly out of the ordinary, definitely.
To turn to the right, all I have to do is let off the left rudder a little bit, and the aircraft will start to turn itself. I've had to climb to 3,000 feet to complete the circuit. I'll be doing a complete circuit and landing back on the runway I took off from. Although ahead of us I'm seeing another airport, Slavko is telling me I'm not out of the woods yet.
You know, I'm looking out the window, and am I supposed to be going slightly to the right?
No, actually, well, yeah, you want to be on a heading of 070. Right now we're in 060.
Okay,
so just a little bit to the right. And LAX, the airport, is just a beam. It's our sort of at our 90.
Oh, okay.
90 degree here.
All right, because I'm seeing something ahead of us, but I guess that's not the airport.
That is another airport, actually.
Oh, that works for me, but I guess we're going to LAX.
It is, yeah. We're going to go back. That's where our maintenance is, and that's where if we had a fire or something a little bit more severe, then we would maybe divert.
Oh, so you're saying this isn't severe enough?
No, an engine failure is actually pretty standard training. It's not standard
I beg
procedure.
to differ.
While I'm certainly not enjoying this, Slavko is right. Airline pilots undergo simulator training for this exact sort of procedure approximately every 6 months. For me, having to do the circuit is giving me a lot of practice balancing out flying on one engine.
So what we're going to do is we're going to try a turn. So I'll command it here on your flight directors, and you're still flying the airplane, the autopilot isn't on. And so what we want to do is we want to make a left turn. We're going to try and come back to the airport. So we're going to go left to a heading of 200.
And it's a climbing left. I'm still climbing here.
You're still climbing because we still want to try to get up to 3,000 feet for the circuit.
Thankfully, after a final left turn, I can see the runway. I'm using the ILS to help me land and intercepted the localizer. Just when I think this is beginning to look like something I'm used to, Slavko gives me some unfortunate news.
So this is where it gets tricky, because now we're going to slow the airplane down to the final approach speed.
Wait a second, this is where it gets tricky?
So the final approach speed is actually going to be about 140 knots.
Oh.
And so we're going to slow the airplane down. We're going to configure the flaps. Flaps for landing aren't going to exceed 25, where normally we would be at 30 or 40.
My flaps are set for landing, I'm slowing, and I'm right on the proper speed to land, but I'm left of the runway and am descending too quickly.
And yeah, looks like if I keep this up, I'm going to be short of the runway.
I'm going to give you a little bit of power. But you see now I gave you a little bit of power, the airplane started giving me a little bit of a turn.
Yeah, I see it's pushing me the other way.
But you are a little bit low, so we're going to have to help you out there.
Unfortunately, adding power has pushed me further off course, and I'm still descending too quickly.
Oh yeah, very low to the ground.
And you see...
And I think I've lost my runway.
You have.
Oh.
And...
Uh-oh.
There's the ground.
Well, we're on the ground. That's good.
Well, the airplane's on the ground, just not on the runway. Despite it looking like I've broken the simulator, the likely result would have been damaged landing gear and the aircraft skidding to a halt. The passengers would be okay, but I gotta say, I'm not happy with this result.
That was really hard. That was really hard. I think training would be a good thing. So if you want to fly multi-engine and handle an engine out, get trained, absolutely. That was really, really tough. It didn't feel at all right. Nothing felt right about that entire flight. It was just wrong from the beginning.
So I just had to give this another go-around. We'll spare you all the details other than to say it went a lot better the second time around. Before I knew it, I was right back on final. I descended too quickly before and will not allow that to happen again.
So you drifted down a little bit, you're a little bit low.
It looks rather high to me, but that's not what the glide slope is indicating. The glide slope actually is telling me I'm a little low. But,
just look at it visually and put yourself down where you think you need to be. Here we go. And use your rudder if you need to give a little bit more.
Okay, so I think we're probably going to put the power down soon.
Yeah. Whenever you're ready, you can go to idle and then watch what the airplane does. You see it tries to squirrel away from you. So
yeah, so now all of a sudden the left rudder is
too much,
being a problem. Oh, look.
You got it down on the center line. Well done.
Wow, that was really, really hard, but this one was obviously much better than the last one. We came up short from the runway in the last one, and we made the runway, and it was much, much better this time around. And you know, it goes to show, I mean, previously I had absolutely no experience. It didn't make it any less difficult to handle, but at least I got to know a little bit more of what to expect, and found myself just a little bit more prepared. It was tough, but finally, second go around, we did it, and I'm pretty happy, all things considered.
Tough as it was, I did have a lot of fun. If you've never flown a simulated 737 before, you really got to check it out. This is Miramar. Made famous by the film Top Gun, this piece of land has been used as an airfield by the military since the Second World War. While it was originally built for the Marines, the base was occupied by the Navy for most of the 20th century. From 1969 on, it was used as the U.S. Navy's Fighter Weapons School, also known as Top Gun. With budget cuts in the mid-1990s, the U.S. military began to consolidate bases, and the Top Gun program was moved. It was at this point that Miramar went back to the Marines. But the departure of the Navy didn't mean the end of Miramar's days as Fightertown, USA. Marine Corps Air Station Miramar became home to the 3rd Marine Air Wing and their 6 squadrons of FA-18 tactical fighters. This is Major Brian Evans. He's the executive officer or second in command of VMFA 314, the Black Knights, one of the 6 F-18 squadrons stationed at Miramar. Major Evans is a second-generation U.S. fighter pilot. His father flew F-4 Phantoms for the Navy during the Vietnam War and was also stationed at Miramar.
My whole young life, I went to school and graduated high school right off the departure end of the runway. And so I grew up around it. As I said, he was a fighter pilot all through the 60s and 70s, which remarkably is not completely unique. We've got a couple of aviators in the Black Knights that were born and raised in San Diego as well. Fathers were fighter pilots out of Miramar. But it's very difficult to be near a base that is flying fighters and not look up as a young kid and look up and decide that's something that I can identify with, and I can visualize myself doing that. So it was just a childhood dream.
And that dream became a reality for Major Evans. He received his wings in 1998 and has been an F-18 pilot with the Marine Corps for the last 12 years.
I'll never forget my very first flight in the F-18 takeoff runway 24, and 10 seconds later I dip a wing and look down, and there's my high school.
Now, contrary to his father, Major Evans chose to go into the Marines instead of the Navy. To outsiders, this may seem like an odd choice, as the Marines aren't the first branch of the military that comes to mind when they think of fighter pilots.
I've always identified with Marines. Oftentimes people ask me, well, if your dad was a Navy fighter pilot, does he look at you sideways because you joined the Marine Corps? And the answer to that is no. He understands and appreciates the fact that I'm more geared towards the Marine Corps and the Marine Corps ethos. And as a Navy fighter pilot, he was able to look across and see that and appreciate that himself.
His father wouldn't have had to look too far to see Marine aviators in Vietnam. In fact, the Black Knights themselves flew the same F-4 Phantoms as the Navy. From 1965 to 1969, the squadron flew more than 25,000 combat hours, dropping more than 100 million pounds of ordnance on the North Vietnamese Army and Viet Cong. But fighters are just one element of Marine aviation. Along with the 6 squadrons of F-18s and the Aerial Refueling Squadron that make up Marine Air Group, or MAG-11, Miramar is also home to MAG-16 and their 8 squadrons of heavy-lift helicopters, which include the CH-46E Sea Knights, CH-53 Super Stallions, and the relatively new MV-22 Osprey. The Osprey is unique as it's a tilt-rotor aircraft, meaning the rotors can actually tilt from a horizontal to vertical position to allow for vertical landing. For the Marines, this is perfect as it can take off or land on the short flight deck of an amphibious assault craft or get into a tight airfield in Afghanistan. In addition to MAGs 11 and 16, the 3rd Marine Aircraft Wing also commands MAGs 13 and 39. MAG 39 is a light helicopter group flying Hueys, AH-1 attack helicopters, and CH-46s. And MAG 13 flies the vertical takeoff and landing Aviate-B Harrier attack aircraft. So by looking at the 3rd Marine Aircraft Wing, it's fairly safe to say that the Marines do a lot of flying, especially when you consider that there are 2 more regular force wings in the Marine Corps, as well as a reserve wing. But what all of these units have in common is their singular goal, to support the Marine on the ground.
Here we are flying tactical fighter jets and training in an air-to-air and an air-to-ground role, but our mindset is we are supporting a Marine on the ground. And that's something as a prior enlisted Marine that I hold dear to my heart, that you won't see so much in other services.
Every Marine is a rifleman, and every Marine officer is a platoon commander at heart.
Captain Frey is one of the F-18 pilots with the Black Knights.
So we ultimately, our focus in our training initially, Officer Candidate School, is very infantry specific, and then for TBS, the basic school, every Marine officer will go to the basic school in Quantico, Virginia for 6 months, where they learn basic infantry officer skills in order to lead a platoon of Marines. From there, we just happen to be lucky enough to go on to flight school, and our weapon of choice here is the F-18 Hornet, but we're Marines first, and we always see ourselves that way.
As far as weapons go, the F-18 is a good choice and befits a knight. The aircraft was designed in the 1970s by Northrop Grumman and McDonnell Douglas to serve as a replacement for some of the Navy's older Vietnam-era aircraft and to complement the F-14. The F-18 was built to be a multi-role fighter, meaning it can not only take on other aircraft in a dogfight, but can also take out enemies on the ground.
Now, how does the Marines use the F-18 Hornet in their mission objectives?
The F-18 has a very good capability in both the air-to-air and air-to-ground arenas, we call it. So basically, just as an example, the F-18, we could carry a pretty robust air-to-air loadout. We'd be able to fight our way into a target area against the air-to-air threat. From there, we'd be able to employ our ordnance, whether that's GP, general purpose bombs, or some sort of precision-guided, laser-guided bombs or GPS-guided bombs, and then fight our way back out. That's just one example. Our bread and butter, really, in what we do today is going to be close air support. So that is really our main focus in training, is close air support. Ultimately, it all comes down to supporting that Marine on the ground and keeping him safe.
So what kind of things do you do in a close air support mission to help make things safer for your Marine brothers on the ground?
Ultimately, it all comes down to employing ordnance in close proximity to friendly forces. So when they're definitely having a tougher day down there than I am up in the airplane, so I'm looking to make their day a little bit easier.
And that's interesting. Now, what capabilities make the F-18 the fighter of choice for the Marines? Because there's a number of frontline fighters in the U.S. military.
Yeah, I think it's coupled with both our time on station and our loadout. We have a decent amount of fuel we can carry, especially in the air-to-ground arena. We're able to stay on station for a significant amount of time. You couple that with the fact that we're able to get gas airborne, and now we're on station. It could be an infinite amount of time. And then we also have that ability to be a swing roll fighter aircraft, where we're not only doing the air-to-ground stuff, we could also do the air-to-air stuff. We could, what we call, take a commit on an aircraft in order to engage them air-to-air.
Powering the Black Knights F-18s are a pair of turbofan engines capable of producing a maximum of 16,000 pounds of thrust each. To put this into simpler terms, if the aircraft were traveling at the speed of sound with maximum thrust, the engines would be producing a combined total of 56,320 horsepower. That's roughly equivalent to the power of 352 Cessna 172s. With that much power, it's not surprising that the aircraft could quite easily fly on one engine.
Obviously, the performance is not going to be as good, but you have that redundant capability that if you had one engine failure or battle damage, something like that, we could easily fly the airplane on one engine. All the systems will still work, all the flight controls and everything.
The F-18 is also capable of being refueled in the air. The aircraft uses the Navy method of in-air refueling known as probe and drogue. In this method, a basket on a hose trails from behind the refueling aircraft. The pilot of the aircraft being fueled deploys a probe, typically hidden in the nose, which connects with this basket.
Make no mistake about it, the Marine Corps is a subdivision of the Navy. We fall within the confines of the Navy. That's our history, is born and bred from the Navy. If it wasn't for the Navy, we wouldn't exist. Typically, Navy squadrons are almost exclusively tied to a carrier air wing, and they're going to deploy F-18s on an aircraft carrier. However, there recently have been some changes to that. But many of our F-18 squadrons as Marines are not deployed on aircraft carriers. So as a Marine aviator of a F-18, you're going to see typically a lot less time on an aircraft carrier than your Navy counterparts.
So what's a typical day like for a Marine F-18 pilot training at Miramar?
Starts the day before we actually go fly. So mission planning, I would venture a guess that if I went out on a 1-hour mission, depending on what it is, obviously once again, but I would say it's somewhere around 1 to 4 is how much time I would take to prepare for that mission.
Yeah, at the initial phase, what we're looking to do is basically use the 1% rule, or pulling about 2.2 Gs nominally. Approximately 45 degrees is our first checkpoint. We're going to look at where our position is of our adversary, looking for the horizontal and vertical overshoot.
Nose has already started drifting. Make sure that you get that full rudder in, and the second we see that lift vector starting to displace, make sure that we go ahead and start to correct that about 30 degrees prior. Start putting those opposite corrections, and if it's not enough, maybe go all the way to full to go ahead and pull the lift vector where you want to see it.
So a 1-hour flight, it's probably going to be about 4 hours of mission planning and preparing for that. That's not even including the brief. So just getting in with the intelligence Marines, preparing for what my mission is, learning exactly what's going on in the target area, stuff like that, planning fuel, administrative and tactical planning. That starts the day before, and it could go into the next day depending upon what time that mission is.
You plug this into the aircraft, and then it will basically inflate and keep the blood in the upper portion of your body, so you remain conscious, which is an important part of fighting the airplane. Then you have basic general survival gear. You got a radio in here. You've got your oxygen mask, all your stuff set up. There's some pencil flares and stuff to help with the recovery in there. Flashlight. Then you got your general gloves and whatnot to go flying. And at the end of the day, put on your old basic Mark I helmet here. You never go flying without a knife.
There's a knife inside there.
You just never know.
Come in early morning for a brief. We'll get all situated, get all set up for the brief. Generally lasts between an hour, hour and a half, something along those lines. And then we'll walk on that flight, ensuring everyone's got the plan in their mind, there's no questions. We'll walk about an hour prior to takeoff time. We'll start our engines on the hack exactly a half hour prior to our takeoff time, and then we'll have various check-ins and such, and we're ultimately looking to get wheels in the well at exactly our takeoff time.
Now you come out here and you say you start 30 minutes before you take off. What are you doing and checking for those 30 minutes?
That's correct. Well, it's actually a very well orchestrated scene between the pilot and the plane captain and the ground crew. We really couldn't execute all of our checks without those enlisted Marines. They're really the ones that own that airplane, and we're just lucky enough to borrow it for an hour or two and then bring it back to them, hopefully in the same condition without any issues with it. Ultimately, they're going to be checking a lot of stuff to the structure of the airplane while we're checking a lot of the avionics.
While today the pilots of the Black Knights are training in air-to-air and air-to-ground tactics, with a moment's notice they could be called into action to execute those skills. And they have. Pilots of the Black Knights have supported Marine operations on the ground in both Afghanistan and Iraq. Elements of the 3rd Marine Aircraft Wing are currently deployed to Afghanistan. And while the F-18 has had a long and very effective military career, that career is nearing its end. All Marine F-18s and Aviate-B Harriers will be replaced by the F-35B. But regardless of the aircraft they fly, the mission of the Marine Aviator is clear. Support the Marine on the ground and make the United States Marine Corps the finest fighting force on the planet. 1 and Season 2 of The Aviators are now available on DVD. For more information on today's segments, visit www.theaviators.tv. From our official home at the Whitman Regional Airport in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, we'll see you next time on The Aviators. The Aviators is made possible by
EAA is a community of aviators sharing the passion, camaraderie, and can-do spirit of aviation. Learn more at EAA.org.
The Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association. America is even more beautiful from the air. Discover it yourself. Information is available at AOPA.org.
A good pilot is prepared for the unexpected. The Lifesaver is designed to provide 1 hour of emergency attitude reference for landing in adverse conditions. Mid-Continent Instruments.
And by
Whitman Regional Airport, Mayday Avionics, and Aspen Avionics.